Good morning. My name is Beth Andes, and I'm a member of this congregation. And it's my absolute delight to welcome all of you here on this rainy Chiefs Sunday. And it's particularly a delight because two great things are happening today. The choir is singing, and I always think that's great. And we're welcoming new members, and I think that's even greater. So for those of you who are visitors today, we ask if you feel willing that you stand up and identify yourself. Just give us your name and where you're from so that we can know you're here. Do we have any visitors today who are brave enough to stand up? Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Carolyn. I'm in the Falls area. My background is Reform, Protestant, and Catholicism, so this will be a delight.
Welcome. Back here, the two ladies.
My name's Carrie from Brookside, and just exploring new avenues. Just looking around, seeing looking for open and let you hear.
Welcome.
I'm from Osceola, Kansas.
Welcome. Very great.
I'm Janet, and I was born in St. Louis Hospital here in Kansas City. I've been church for 2 years of my life, right in the church.
Welcome back.
I live in Milwaukee, Washington. I was here for the day visiting and strolling down the road.
Welcome. Are there any others that I missed? Then welcome to you all.
Good morning, dearly beloved. Welcome to this heavy day. I'm glad that you are here. In the midst of my weariness and discouragement, in the midst of our stories of pain and trauma, in the midst of a world that is not as many of us would have wished it to be, it is good to see your faces. It is good to be assured that you are still there, that we are still here. My colleague Lynn Unger offers this invitation. You say you want a revolution, and who could argue with that? Bad is avalanching into worse, and we are all in its path. But don't buy a gun. The people you would be fighting already have bigger guns and more will to shoot them. Don't bother arming yourself. Instead, disarm. Disarm yourself of assumptions and of your brittle belief that you know how things should be. Disarm yourself of expectation. Know that you will be wrong. Disarm yourself of the need for comfort. Go lightly into places where you are a stranger. Disarm yourself of loyalty to what is normal but false. Pledge allegiance to the tree outside your window, to your neighbor's children, to the speed of light, to all that is merely true and beautiful. Fill your arms with fruit, with flowers, with a cat or a dog or a lover or a mug of tea. Fill your body with singing or dancing or the scent of trees in the rain. Empty your days of all that fails to serve the revolution, that fails the test of the 7 generations. Commit to the revolution, and I promise we will win. Not, of course, that everything will be fine. It never is. Revolution isn't the same as victory. Revolution is the turning of a wheel whose essence is change. Here, in this covenant community of memory and promise, let us commit ourselves once again to the turning of the wheel whose essence is change. Let us strengthen ourselves with beauty, with connection, with history, with hope. Let us empty ourselves of toxic privilege and be filled with a clean anger to serve the truth of justice. Let us lay down exhaustion and despair and wait, knowing that if we are open, renewed energy and purpose will come. Let us open the circle wider to embrace those who would be part of our covenant on this journey. Let us kindle the chalice in this room, knowing that gesture is repeated across this beleaguered nation and around the world this morning, knowing that no amount of darkness can extinguish our light, holding each other in the turning wheel of change. We're going to change it up this morning, and I'm going to ask you to rise and sing our chalice lighting song, and then we'll have Maya light the chalice for us.
Hello, my name is Maya, and I light this chalice for the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
Thank you. And at this time, we'll send our children off to their classes with song. is with rejoicing that we this morning have the opportunity formally to welcome into membership those who have joined the All Souls congregation during the past several months. Ours is a free faith, and our church is not based upon dogma or creeds, but upon the thoughtful and freely given commitment of mind and heart in community. Into this circle of shared search, collective counsel, and mutual support, these people have elected to enter. May this community fulfill in practice their best hopes. May their wisdom and energy be generously shared here. And may we welcome them with gladness and with open hearts. Will the following people please come forward when Angie calls your name to sign the membership book? And if you have family with you, you can bring them up too.
Crystal Baird. Crystal is a writer, still grappling with what she wants to be when she grows up. She moved to Kansas City 5 years ago from Tampa Bay and just married last year. Crystal spends her personal time reading, watching old and cheesy science fiction movies, and has an unhealthy obsession with fountain pens. So now you know what to get her for a gift. Chandra Demetria. Chandra manages a learning and development team helping improve organizational performance. She moved to Kansas City from New Hampshire 10 years ago, loves pickles, gift idea, cookbooks, gardening, travel, preserving food, and sci-fi. You guys should be friends. Ellen Marie Fox, also known as Foxy. She always wears her little fox pendant. Foxy is a longtime UU member, a retired language arts and reading teacher. She has lived various places across the U.S. and has made Kansas City her home. Though retired, she fills her time teaching water aerobics and yoga. She's eager to be a part of the All Souls community and to know more members. So introduce yourself. Mark and Carol Hunt. There they are. Carol retired as an advertising art director and then began the fun work of volunteering at the Detroit Zoo, an organization for bat conservation. Thanks to her background, she created a book on the Detroit Zoo butterflies. Kept the signage for the zoo's birds up to date, and did programming and signage for bats at OBC, Organization for Bat Conservation. She moved to Kansas City with her husband, Mark, last November, and made yet another wonderful discovery in All Souls and people who make it a welcoming place. Kudos. Mark recently moved back to Missouri after spending over 45 years in Michigan, where he worked as a finance manager for Ford Motor Company. Having grown up in southern Missouri, both Mark and Carol felt they were returning home. It was a big move, but made much easier thanks to the welcoming friendship and spiritual affinity found in All Souls. And last, but very not least, Suzanne Snyder. Suzanne is a native New Orleanian, say that one really quick, and has lived in Kansas City since 2006. She is a recovering Catholic, you know, the old story, who still worships the culinary trinity of onions, celery, and bell peppers. You know what her gift basket is going to be filled with. Her daughter, Paige, suggested All Souls to balance the negativity we felt, or they felt around them. The theme of their first service was hospitality, and she was hooked. So welcome our new members.
Right. In the spirit of dedication, I now invite all of you, our new members, to join in speaking the words of covenant that are going to be up on the screen. Together.
This is now my religious community. It is composed of people, both like me and different. Together, we make it what it is. I want this community to be a source of life and wholeness. It will be if I am. It will make generous gifts if I am a generous giver. It will be a friendly and welcoming place if I remember to reach out. It will be a responsible steward of resources if I participate responsibly in it. It will share beauty and challenging thought with other people if I invite them. It will be a community of fearlessness and faith, of loyalty and love. If I make it what it is and am filled with ease, as I become a member of this congregation, I dedicate myself to the task of becoming all the things I want my church to be.
Will the congregation now please rise and join in welcoming our new fellow members by affirming together with them our words of covenant. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Into this community, so dedicated and so understood, these new members are now enfolded. May our congregation nurture and challenge them, offering comfort and guidance and calling forth the best within them. May they, in their turn, bring to this institution energy, vision, and commitment, that it may become ever more fully the community we have hoped for it to be. We rejoice in the promise of new friendship and growth. And again, we pledge to walk together in the way of truth, compassion, and freedom. May the splendid venture of life continue to be celebrated faithfully here. And in this community, may the human spirit find an ample home. Congratulations and welcome. Yay.
people join hate groups has been studied extensively, but researchers are still learning how people quit. Starting in the late 1980s, one Norwegian sociologist interviewed white supremacists as they attempted to leave the Scandinavian neo-Nazi movement. His findings were counterintuitive. Many members became hardcore racists only after they had joined white supremacist groups. Rather than pre-existing anti-Semitism or xenophobia, a cocktail of experiences such as isolation, depression, anxiety, or childhood abuse typically served as the stepping stones toward extremism. This suggests that the behavioral and social rewards of participating in hate groups are perhaps more fundamental to understanding and stopping extremist behavior than the ideology behind it. Ari Kruglansky, a social psychologist at the University of Maryland and a Holocaust survivor, hit upon a related discovery. While researchers had believed that some combination of class, gender, geography, intelligence, and age determined who was most likely to become a white supremacist, Kruglansky found that psychological signposts were better predictors of radicalization. He called these factors the 3 N's: need, narrative, and network. It doesn't matter if they're skinheads or jihadis. Everyone who gets involved in hate movements has a deep urge to belong and to participate in a greater cause.
Some of us are purely tribal. Our loyalty is to our family, posse, gang, political party, identity group, no matter what. Others among us are ideological. Our primary loyalty is to values and truth, and we will repudiate or tell harsh truths about even people we love if they violate those values. The tribalists will repudiate values to stay with the gang. It is a way to understand how good Republicans are at cohesiveness and how bad Democrats can be, and why that is sometimes a good thing. Often membership in the Klan makes its members themselves indifferent to the larger society and the rights and interests of other kinds of people. This loyalty also overrides their loyalty to truth and knowledge. It is an ethos in which the power that resides in the elites stays in the elites, and what is known by outsiders stays outside.
Good morning. I went to Carver Friday morning. I worked there with the 2nd graders and the 6th graders. And I took my camera and I wanted to take a picture of the 2nd graders because they're such cool kids to show you this morning. And they asked why, of course. And I said, I told them what we were going to do today. And I said, I want them to see what nice kids you are. And they wanted to make a video. That's the way this works. So no rehearsal. They worked out a little bit with their teacher what they were going to say, and we just made a video. No rehearsal, no nothing. And it's a little garbled. They're going to say, hi, all soul members. And then in Spanish and English, they're going to say, thank you for all you do for our school. And there's some giggling. You're just going to have to put up with that. Would you run that, please? Carver is a is a great and working experiment. It's the dual language model. The principal there is a great advocate of it. The goal of the school is to make kids bilingual and biliterate. And that process affects their learning centers in very beneficial ways. The tracking research shows that they are better learners. When they graduate, when they get into the workforce, they're generally better earners, and they are more open, characteristically, more open to and interested in people and ideas and cultures that are different from themselves. So there are only 2 schools in Missouri that embrace this model, and everyone is amazed that more don't. It's a K-6 school, about 380 to 400 kids, 85% of which are Hispanic, and about 80% of those are not documented. They're from undocumented families, but most of them have American birth certificates. And while you're dealing, and it's hard, and I've been down in my cups about it, but these kids remind me that they deal with a much more difficult version of the reality we deal with, and they're going at it, as you can see, and doing their best. A little bit of history. Our program is of mentoring, and it is mentoring and tutoring. Is beginning its 10th year. Next year, we expect to have a 10-year anniversary celebration. We have a very healthy volunteer program. I'll read the names next week. We get 2 Sunday special collections. But right now, we have 14 All Souls members. 3 retired teachers have joined us who are not members of our congregation. And then we have 2 members who are in process getting the background check and going to come out and join us. So we're up to an all-time high of 19 volunteers at Carver. And for our anniversary year, we're going to shoot for 20. I'm just going to say that what sacrifices you make will go for, generally, we try to reserve it for enrichment activities, trips to the Kaufman, for programs that the symphony puts on, to the zoo. Sometimes the older kids will get a chance to go to the Brown versus Board Museum in Topeka. Things like that really thrill the kids, and they really have no other chance at it. A little one about that age was heard not so long ago on a bus crossing the Mississippi River on a field trip to ask if that was the ocean. And so you can see that what you do gets kids out and into things that these kids don't normally get. One part of the description of our immigration population that just doesn't seem to make it into the dialogue often enough is their great, deep gratitude at being here and having the opportunity. And if you go out to that school and watch those kids, you can see that they come there from homes where that gratitude is lived out every single day, because these are deeply appreciative, conscientious, and grateful kids. They have a dedicated faculty, and they certainly do energize them. One other thing I want to say is that the unusual thing about whatever sacrifice you make here is that there are no administrative costs whatsoever. Every cent that you part with to do something for these kids goes for the kids. It's all administered by faculty members who know what they need and who not uncommonly spend their own money on it. So Here we go for the Carver collection. If you forgot your checkbook, the order of service tells how you can go up online, or you can make a mental note to bring your checkbook next week if you didn't today. Please help us out. Thank you very much.
Where is Carver's?
It's I paid attention to your resume and made a mental note to talk with you. It's out on Elmwood. If you take Cleaver, if you know the city, I'll draw you a map cheerfully. You go. It's about 3-4 miles from here. It's on Elmwood Avenue, about 2 blocks north of Cleaver, and it's a lovely, lovely place. I paid close attention to all of your resumes.
He's my brother. He's my
Will you join me now in the words of dedication for our offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society. Okay. So let me go back to Emerson for just a moment. When he told his Unitarian minister colleagues who were about to graduate from seminary that their church was a hot mess and it was all the fault of ministers, he said, "Alas for the unhappy preacher that is called to stand in the pulpit and not give the bread of life." And what is that bread? Your own life, he replied, passed through the fire of thought. It is always tempting when crisis events are abroad in the land as they are now to come to the pulpit and serve that bread half-baked, to turn from thought to the raw immediacy of emotion, both personal and shared. Here, in this covenant community, it is entirely fitting for all of us to acknowledge outrage, alarm, disgust, fathomless disappointment, new and remembered trauma, moral anguish, overwhelming grief, bewildering fear, weariness, the implacable determination of renewed resistance in every imaginable form. To this place we bring both crushed hope and ethical demand, as well as confusion, longing to know that we are not alone, yearning to find comfort and the vision and intention that will give us energy to continue the struggle for the world we believe in. All of that, as well as our doubts and our hesitations and our own guilt, all of it is welcome here. All of you, all that is our life together is welcome. It is all holy. It is the spirit of life at work in us, the human spirit forever calling us to better justice, to larger compassion, to hold each other in respect and accountability, to conduct our lives with meaning and integrity. I have felt all these emotions, cycled through them repeatedly over the course of the past few weeks. It is, as I'm sure many of you have found, exhausting. And I have learned something new about my privilege through this experience, thinking all the way back to the last election. I have realized that I assume that any political event that doesn't align with my values and my hopes for the future of our country is a temporary aberration, some kind of mistake that is going to be fixed when normal people of goodwill, the grown-ups, get back in charge. I take it for granted that my view of the common good is the common good, as anyone with common sense ought to understand. I know now how people more marginalized than I experience this kind of discouragement, not as a temporary setback, but rather as further confirmation of a fundamentally skewed system that can tilt arbitrarily at any moment in which we have no immediately decisive power. It is a humbling awareness. It also reminds me that those folks, those queer folks, those disabled folks, those folks of color, those abused, incarcerated, silenced folks, don't have the luxury of giving up. don't have the option of not showing up to the next chapter of the struggle because it is in their neighborhoods and on their doorsteps and over their living bodies. So who am I to retreat into my privileged shock and despair? Okay, lost that round, and it's going to make things harder going forward. A lot harder. But where is there to go but forward? It was hard for the suffragists to get the vote when they didn't have the vote. It was hard for the kidnapped Africans and their children to win their freedom when they didn't have the freedom to work for it. Well, I have my freedom and I have my vote, for now anyway. What should I be whining about? Moreover, the demographics are on our side, if not in my lifetime, soon enough. And meanwhile, there is work to be done. Children to be raised, gardens to be tended, witness to be borne, protest to be lodged, defiance to be cried, votes to be cast, resistance to be sustained, people to be loved. No one said it would be easy, and if they ever do, we will know it for one more lie. That's all I got. That's as baked as this raw injury on the soul of our nation is in my life right now. It is abiding in the fire of thought with each passing hour. I am confident that we will speak of it more hereafter, and the time will come when I can offer something nourishing from it. We must, after all, find ways to be patient with ourselves and others, now that the urgent suspense is over. We must take up again the ordinary disciplines of mind and heart and the faithful exercise of responsibilities that weave together the fabric of our lives. For it is true that if we become so disheartened that we fail in this, then the victory of our oppressors is made all the greater. And so I invite you to turn with me to our planned topic for this morning, which I trust will not be entirely without relevance to these recent events. We have all, I think, been a bit stunned by the increasing boldness of unapologetic racial prejudice in the period since Donald Trump's campaign and election. Hate groups like neo-Nazis, white identity-based organizations, anti-Muslim groups, and the KKK have become adept at using social media to reach their potential audience, as well as staging rally events and making the news. This is not entirely attributable to the Trump presidency, and indeed is not just an American phenomenon, nor even particularly recent. And as a matter of fact, such groups have been around long enough to have been the object of some interesting academic study, the results of which I would suggest ought to be of significance for the church and for religious community in general. One intriguing factoid that I have gleaned from the work of the Southern Poverty Law Center is that the KKK itself as an organization appears to be losing its popular appeal. From 2016 to 2017, the actual number of chapters dropped from 130 to 72. I speculate that this decline may be largely generational, that the aging Kluxers may not have taken to the internet and social media fast enough to secure the attention of today's teens and young adults. And also that the rituals and the hierarchy of titles, that may have gratified their grandfathers might strike millennials as ridiculous, no matter how much they might embrace the teachings of prejudice. Ahem, church, take note. Another data point worth pondering came out of the Scandinavian research cited by Wes and Zimna. Because they were looking specifically at people leaving the Norwegian neo-Nazi movement, the investigators were able to report that the average length of involvement was between 3 and 4 years. This resonates with the accounts of several reformed American skinhead gang members whose convictions changed as they married or started enduring romantic relationships, had children, and began building businesses or careers. In other words, grew up. There certainly are a sad number of lifelong members of hate groups, but it is suggestive that for many people, their attraction to these organizations is a phase that may eventually be outgrown. Here, too, it seems to me that the church might have a useful role to play. But the most significant insight from these studies is that attitudes of prejudice do not so much precede a person's entrance into the life of a hate group, but rather follow it. You don't become a neo-Nazi because you already hate Jews. You learn to hate Jews from your fellow neo-Nazis. So if people are not joining such groups to support pre-existing prejudices, why do they join? That is the question that Ari Kruglanski asked, and his results are kind of stunning. People join hate groups to get their psychological human needs met. Needs for identity, belonging, meaning, and excitement. If hate becomes the recipe for meeting those needs, they will learn to hate. And they will resist with violence efforts by others to deprive them of those emotional satisfactions. Indeed, many former members who have escaped the gravitational force of ideological gangs often describe themselves as addicts. They may have gotten sober, but they know the power of the drug and are aware of its enduring attraction for them. This is precisely why I believe that bad religion drives out no religion. Those human needs that are addressed by religious community are not imaginary. No matter how many hypocrite clergy you may have encountered or how many errors the scriptures may contain, those needs will have their way with us one way or another. And if we cannot provide for them apart from communities of hate, then hate is what we will consume. Hate is easy. In some ways, it is what we are genetically programmed for, if we are not both careful and lucky. So let's explore for a moment what it is that hate groups supply and how authentic religious community might offer the kind of substance that would plug into those same receptors in the soul and block the appeal of hate's message. Eric Kruglanski named 3 psychological needs that hate groups provide for. I actually think there's a 4th as well. Identity, belonging, story, and adrenaline. All of these, I propose, we could find in positive religious community if we were intentional about teaching ourselves to do so. Identity is easy for a hate group. I am whatever the other isn't. I am white, I am straight, I am male, I am able-bodied, I am Christian or a Muslim or American, and everybody else isn't. Everyone else is different in a way that makes them less worthy than me and those just like me. Now, identity is a basic human need. We all want to know who we are and what makes us special. That's fine, but it does not have to come at someone else's expense. A positive religious identity has 2 parts. The first is that each of us is human like all other people. In a theistic tradition, one might say that all of us are children of God. As a humanist, I like to say that we are all children of the cosmos. The same creative energies and forces that brought about other life brought about us. At the same time, each of us is a unique and irreplaceable genetic experiment with differing abilities, preferences, and gifts to offer. If we are reminded to appreciate both our common humanity and the value of diversity, we are less likely to seek our sense of identity by disparaging others for not being exactly like us. Sometimes the biggest challenge that we face as Unitarian Universalists is learning how to celebrate how much our unique faith means to us without mocking or belittling those who believe differently. But that is an important commitment and skill. The second need that Kruglanski identified, he called network, and I'm calling belonging. Human beings are designed by evolution to be a social species, and our limbic networks are not complete in isolation. We all need to belong to a group. Hate groups bind themselves together around a common grudge against the world. Members share a conviction that they have suffered a wrong and should receive special privileges as a result. If you did not feel yourself to be part of this grudge before you joined the group, you will learn to sense it as your connections grow, and you come to want payback on behalf of others, even before you want it for yourself. By contrast, authentic religious community comes together not around a grudge, but around a covenant, a promise of mutuality about how we are going to stand together in the face of life's difficulties and challenges, a pledge to be there for one another and to hold ourselves and each other accountable for living the values we believe in. Taken seriously, that covenant creates a powerful bonding. For it is when we have struggled side by side with other people to meet a challenging goal, or confront a danger, or keep each other going, or help each other grow, even when that is uncomfortable, it is then that we are most truly connected. If we have a covenant that we are striving to be faithful to, then we don't need a grudge to unite us. Kruglanski called the third need narrative. Part of our mental operating system as human beings is that we are storytellers, including about our own lives. We deeply long to see ourselves as part of a significant, meaningful story. If at all possible, we would like to be the heroes of that drama. All hate groups seem to have elaborate conspiracy theories, dramatic stories of which their members are the only ones to be fully aware, the only ones who are heroically responding to the real crisis of the times. To embed our own lives and actions into an ongoing narrative offers a sense of purpose and meaning. It makes us important in the scheme of things. Religious communities offer their own versions of the narrative that our lives are part of. It may be the story of salvation, or of spiritual awakening, or the wheel of karma, or the war between good and evil. For our community, I think the common story is the progress of the Enlightenment, the triumph of knowledge and reason over ignorance, of democracy over tyranny, and of equal justice over selfishness and special interest. Part of the work we do here is to remind each other that we are, in fact, part of that essential narrative, even when we are in a difficult chapter. like the present. Lastly, hate groups offer their members the adrenaline of mob psychology and violence. There is something viscerally satisfying about submerging our inhibitions and indulging our anger. But that indulgence is destructive to both self and community. From the accounts of former members, it is striking how often the simmering violence of hate groups gets turned upon its own constituents in response to some real or imagined failure of loyalty. They will beat each other up with almost the same enthusiasm as the ostensible objects of their wrath, which suggests that the violence itself, in fact, is the point. There have been religious communities over the course of history which have used these same kinds of excitements in holy war, for example, or in human sacrifice. But that is not something I think we would want to emulate. Rather, we must cultivate our ability to be genuinely moved by all that is truly sacred, by the wonders of creation in nature, by examples of human nobility and sacrifice in the service of ideals, by images of hope for the possible future we envision, by tenderness for all the losses and sorrows that we share, and even by the demand to bear witness for more equal justice in the world. We may never be entirely immune to the siren song of violence, but when our hearts are filled with the astonishments and mysteries and tragedies of human existence at its deepest, then we have something better than hate to build the meaning of our lives upon. It has been said that where you tend a rose, a thistle cannot grow. I am convinced that where we tend a community of love, the power of hate is diminished. Where we offer connection and teach the message of our common humanity, the hunger to belong will not so easily drive us to learn prejudice and vengeance as a way for our lives to matter. We do this not only for ourselves, to keep our own souls safe from the corrupting messages of hatred, but all the more for others, so that there might always be a different option, something better than hate, for those who are searching for a source of significance. It is all here, in this heritage of freedom and reason, of mutual acceptance and the celebration of diversity. It is here, identity and belonging, a story to tell and inspiration to share. It is here, in our response to the summoning of the human spirit, which calls us to the better lives we might lead, the better selves we might become, and the better world we might build together. When that spirit says do, even in the face of oppression's most insolent deeds, well, you gotta do. Will you stand and sing with me?
Shout when the Spirit says stop. You gotta vote when the Spirit says vote. You gotta vote when the Spirit says vote. When the Spirit says vote, you gotta vote. Oh yeah, you gotta vote when the Spirit says vote. You gotta care when the Spirit says care. You gotta care when the Spirit says care. When the Spirit says care, you gotta care. Oh yeah, you gotta care when the Spirit says care. You gotta care when the Spirit says care. You gotta care when the Spirit says care.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. For all of these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. Things are not getting worse, says Adrienne Marie Brown. Things are not getting worse, they are getting uncovered. We must hold each other close and continue to pull back the veil. So be it. Go in peace.